awesome. Whereas Angela would say, beautiful. So this is kind of it, isn't it? We do this and then we go home. Is there, oh, okay. We have tomorrow. Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, is there another session? I got to check my schedule. So this is the extemporaneous. Oops. Hey, Wardy. Just so y'all know, my choice was either come do this or call in sick and go to the Doobie Brothers rehearsal. I know. Hold it, I'm leaving. I just hadn't told you the outcome. I was getting ready to apologize for leaving. Now, I guess I have to stay. So what? Yep. I couldn't work the time out. I was backstage trying to figure it out with them. And finally, I just said, adios. You're more important. All right, so this is called Quantum Leap. Let's talk about Quantum Leap for a second. Quantum Leap, let me tell you how this came about, this whole idea of this material. Years ago, when Mark Willis came on as a team leader in one of our offices in Austin, Mark was so terrific and was really one of the great hires and ultimately it's become one of the great partnerships of my life. And within, I don't know, probably 30, 60 days or whatever, I'm gone. I'm out of the Market Center, never to return, never to go to a sales meeting, an ALC meeting, an awards meeting. I didn't go to anything. I just left and went on to do this thing called Keller Williams Realty International. And there was this really obnoxious agent, I guess a year or so later, named Mary Tennant, who, yeah, exactly, this awesome individual. And she said, hey, who's this Gary Keller? We don't even know who that is. We never see him or whatever. It'd be nice to meet him. So Mark came to me and says, hey, she has said this, what do you think? And I said, okay, what would you like to do? And he said, well, we talked about it. We came up with this idea that I would go to, we found a place that was right in the middle of the city that we could use one day a month. So one day a month, I went to the spot, had a stool, and I had a, sorry, my thing's pulled, and I had a flip chart, and I would just sit on the stool, and we divided the meeting times. You could come to one of 3 meeting times. So for a half a day, once a month, I just sat there with the small groups of agents and said, what do you want to talk about? And they would ask me questions, and whatever we wanted to talk about, we did. And usually it evolved into me kind of trying to explain the way that I made decisions or the way I had done things as an example. And I would go to the flip chart, and because I'm very visual, I just start trying to explain it visually. And I would take the flip chart paper back, fold it up, put it in a folder, and forget about it. And I got asked to make a presentation. This went on for a long time. This is months, okay? And a year or so later, I was asked to make a presentation at Family Reunion, and I thought this would make great material. I opened up and realized that when I looked at it, what was done was kind of writing my autobiography of my philosophy. It was kind of my life, almost in diagram form. So I got it out, had it all typeset and everything, and then I just kind of filled in the gaps to make it make sense. And then went in and made that presentation. I didn't know what to call it. I could have called it My Life or whatever, but I called it Quantum Leap as kind of a joke on the audience, because when you think of Quantum Leap, you think of quantum somehow sounds big, right? I mean, it just sounds like a big word. But the reality is it means what? Small. Yeah. Because the big aha of my adult life came early on when I realized that success is sequential, it's not simultaneous, and it occurs in small steps, not big leaps. Okay? And I realized it was one step in front of the other, one step at a time. So I called it Quantum Leap when I made the presentation. It went over really well, and I then got requests to teach it again and again and again. When we talk about this thing called the Keller Williams culture, originally, this is what they were referring to. That this was the course that I traveled around the country and I would go and teach. And I had a 1-day version and a 2-day version. Today I have about an hour and 45-minute version. Okay? So this is kind of an overview. A fun thing, if you've read the book, The One Thing, if you bought a copy, and let me just point out to you that today is the last day you can get a copy of it. If you don't buy a copy today, you won't get a copy of it till April 9th. Okay? That's just the way that the publisher is timing the release of the book. So if you want copies and you want to use it in your life in any way, we brought plenty of copies. But when it's done, we're taking them back and repurposing them, and you won't be able to get it. And you won't be able to give it to anybody or use it. So I would highly encourage you that if you want it, go get it. Go get 5 or 6 copies or whatever and pass it around, because you want your world to have this conversation. Well, if you've looked at that book, if you're familiar with Quantum Leap at all, and if you're not familiar, you'll realize it as we talk, that instead of writing a book called Quantum Leap, what I've ended up doing is I'm beginning to divide it up into topics. So the One Thing really delves into some of the basics of Quantum Leap. So this is going to sound a little familiar to you if you've read The One Thing or sat in on my talk a few days ago. It's not exactly the same thing, okay? But it has pieces of it, so you'll recognize that. One of the fun things about this program is that it's now a course you could take at Baylor University for credit. Students at Baylor University can sign up for Quantum Leap. And they can take it. And I have a partnership with a professor, and so I have to go to the campus a few times a semester, and I bus the kids to Austin the other times, and so that I don't have to get up early. Thank you for the money that allows me to do that, by the way. I don't charge them, they don't pay me, and it's all done, you know, from the heart. And but it's very cool. And to see these kids never get to have this conversation. This is the first time in their life for 99% of them. Every now and then I run into a kid that had parts of this. But for the most part, no one's talked to them this way about life. No one's put it to them this way as a simple model. Not that the model represents perfection, but that life can actually be modeled. If we believe that people have lived before us and they've learned things, then the truth is that we can take what they learned and build models around that, not as perfection, but simply as road signs, as directionals, as signposts that say, hey, if you're going to look at life and you haven't built your own model for the way you want to live, then this might be a good place for you to jump off and begin. Now, let me just also tell you that this is really my own personal views. This is. The One Thing, as you may have heard me say, is highly researched. Everything in that is provable with factual research. There's no opinion in any of that. On the flip side, this is all opinion. And I just want to make that real clear. Even though the pieces that overlap with The One Thing have research attached to it, none of this does. In the sense, no, it just doesn't. What you get is the next hour and a half or so of my head. You get the one. Think of it as just a one-act play on how a man has lived his life, if that's meaningful to you in any way. Okay? I will start talking in just a second as if I know what I'm talking about. I will also talk to you with a lot of gusto and bravado and might even start pointing a finger. That's my self-talk because I only know of one way to talk, particularly in teaching this type of material, and that is I can only come from the heart and I can only tell you exactly what I think about the way I think life goes. This is the way I've built my life. I've lived a good part of it, by the way, and this is what it looks like. And because I'm a student of life, and I'm a student of the game, and I'm also a student of my game, I have an interesting head. My wife every now and then even looks at me and she says, "I wonder what it's like to live in your head." And I go, "Well, I don't know about that." But I tend to look at things. I tend to look for models. I tend to look for examples, role models, if you will. I tend to look for road signs, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I would like to get the most out of my life, which means I'd like to start by driving a car instead of having to build my own. Okay? So a lot of this is built upon the shoulders of other people, right? On the experiences of other people. In the end, though, it's all my opinion. So just take it with a grain of salt. If you agree with it, awesome. If you don't agree with it, awesome. If it spurs your thinking to make decisions that you want to work in your life, awesome. Okay? Check our watches. My watch says about 3:30 or so. We're going to run for about an hour and a half. Actually, 71 minutes left is what we have according to this. So we're going to go fast, right? Because the truth is that we could spend an hour, we can spend a week, we can spend a lifetime, okay, on this material. So let's dive in. I'm going to dispense with any theatrics if it's okay with you, and I'm just going to go right into the heart of what this is. So if you can see this, can you actually read it? Okay, good. Well, I'll look on with you. So here's what it says. What it says is that there are 4 areas. And again, remember, this is me. This is my life. Take that with a grain of salt. I'm not telling you this is the way life is. I'm telling you this is the way my life is and the way I view it. So I'm gonna dispense with telling you that every time this is my view. And I'm going to start telling you this is the way it is. But just insert this is the way it is according to Gary and his life only. And then you'll be fine. I just don't want to have to keep saying it, okay? Got that? Thank you. Check. We're good. Check that off. Okay, good. So I look at it this way. This is again the way I tell the kids. I said, look, there are 4 buckets we can look at. The first is, who are you and what are you trying to do in your life? And what are the things that you need to do in order to maximize your life potential? And the second issue is if we're clear on that, then let's jump on over and let's go get a career. And then let's talk about what do you have, what are the essential, what are the bare minimum essential elements that we need to really drive in on that really makes that work. And then, by the way, if you want your career to become a business or you want to start a business, then here's what's going to really matter there. Now, I want you to notice something under that one. Notice I only have 3 things: hire, train, manage. The reason I have that is because when you have individuals and you've hired the right person, the way that you train them is with a job description, and the way you manage them is by getting them to do the second column. Right? So when I get to the 3rd column about business success, I say, look, we're only really going to talk about a couple of things, and mainly it's about how to hire and train people to a job description. Because honestly, once you've done that, from that moment on, how do you work with them? You have them set a goal for their job description. You ask them to build a plan, a work plan around their job description. You ask them to fill out a 411 so they understand what they need to do this week to be on track for the month, to be on track for the year. And then you ask them to time block what matters most in their job description so they get it done every day. And then you hold them accountable on a weekly basis. Have a nice day. And people are either going to perform or they don't perform. If they don't perform, then part company. If they do perform, give them more responsibility, give them more training, give them more support, and let them rise to their level of ability. Okay? I know I simplify it because it's simple. Don't complicate it. And the last one is, if you have money from your career and or your business and you want to invest it, making money and investing is not complicated. There's some basic principles that you apply. We talk about a gazillion of them, but at the end of the day, we can narrow it down to just a couple of basic ideas. If you can hold true to that, you're going to be fine. If you can't hold true to that, that could be a challenge. Okay? So that's what this represents. When I teach the kids, we actually spend hours with nothing but this graphic up here. And we talk through all of this as much as possible. I'm going to do a little of that with you, if that's okay. There is a graphic that comes from the Quantum Leap booklet that someone saw me going through all these notes and they said, that's not 2 hours. I said, no, it's not. All right, let's start with that graphic right there. This graphic came after a wonderful parenting moment with my son. When I asked him to do something, and he said he didn't want to do it. And my response to him was, well, what does that have to do with it? I didn't ask him if he wanted to do it. If I had intended for your opinion to matter, I would have said, do you want to do it? I said, let me share something with you. I said, in life, I said, there are people that succeed and there are people that fail. And I said, I want you to understand there's no such thing as a complete failure and there's no such thing as a perfect success. That life is in between all of that. And I said, look, what most people do is they're average. And the reason they're average is because they give average effort. And that means they only do what? What they want to do. I said, that's the biggest trick in life, is that most people only do what they want to do. And by the way, usually at best, that gets you to average. If you want to succeed, you want to live on the right side, you're going to have to step outside your comfort zone and do things that you don't want to do. Of course, what I told him is, I'm going to teach you how to do that now. I'm going to show you that you won't die from doing things you don't want to do, so do it. That was the conversation we had. Later, I just inserted this in there and started talking to the kids this way at school as well. Saying, look, the biggest challenge that you have is you're going to look up and you go, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to eat that. I don't want to do that. I said, one of the biggest challenges we have in health right now is people say, I don't want to eat that. And you go, really? It's the best thing for you, but it doesn't taste good. And my answer is, what does that have to do with it? If you think of food as medicine first and food as something you enjoy second, right? And then you combine it, it's medicine that tastes good. That's what food is. If you think of it as that, you change the way you think about it. Anyway, so I said to them, I said, look, if you want to live on the far right over here, the farther that you're willing to go out of your comfort zone and do things that you don't initially like to do, guess what? You're going to be more successful. Okay? And so today, I want to talk to you. I want you to keep that in mind when we talk, because many times when we have these conversations, people will say, well, they'll listen through the filter of, I don't like to do that. That's what I hear people say to me. And my response is, what does that have to do with anything? And the answer is, nothing. So keep your opinion to yourself. Look, okay, breathe. You're listening to myself talk. But I want you to hear the reason I talk this way to you is not because I'm trying to be mean or rude. I'm trying to let you hear the tone of self-talk of focus. That's what it sounds like. It doesn't say please. It doesn't sound milquetoasty in any way. It says do it. Do it now. Shut up. Quit whining. Do it. That's what it says. That's what inner self-talk when you need to do something you don't want to do. So this page right here that comes out of Quantum Leap, and you can download all of this. We have this on our website. To me, is kind of a model for building the highest productive personal life you can. And notice that it comes right out of. We repurposed this a little bit for the one thing, but it starts right there with a personal mission statement. And basically, here's what I do. I'm gonna reference my kids a lot because that's where my head is a lot with this material. What I'll ask the kids is, and I'll ask you the same thing, what's your definition of leadership? If someone asks you, like I ask the children, I say, look guys, define leadership for me. And when I ask them that, what do you think I normally get back? Here's the answer. What I invariably get back, 99% of the time, Tom, what I get back is getting people to do things. Invariably, that's what I get back from them. You know, it's getting others to do stuff, right? That's what you get. And I look at him and I go, okay, well, that's interesting. And I've heard that, in various forms about leadership. But let me ask you just a question I want you to reflect on. Why do you naturally assume that you lead others first instead of yourself? Why was that your natural instinct? And they get real quiet because they don't know. The reason they answered it is because that's what they've heard adults talk about. That when adults talk about leadership, they always talk about leading others, getting others to do things instead of themselves. And so the point that I make to these kids, and I'm making to you today, is leadership starts with yourself. In other words, put your mask on first before you try to help the person next to you. In other words, bring leadership to yourself first. And if you can't lead yourself, then I damn well am not going to let you lead my child. And I'm sure not going to follow you personally. This is one of the big challenges that you have when you step out to be a leader of other people. If you're not an effective personal leader, I can assure you, if you start trying to read the Maxwell books and the other books on how you lead the other, all the issues of leadership, it's going to come off as phony, fake, and it's not going to work. Because anybody who leads themselves first isn't going to follow you unless you're self-led. They're not going to do it. They're going to look at you and they're going to know you. They're going to realize that you're trying to get them to do things you want them to do, but you, in fact, can't lead yourself out of a paper bag. Okay? Now breathe. This is my self-talk. This is the way I think. Okay? Okay. So the Quantum Leap starts off with a very basic premise. It says, bring purpose to your life. Lead your life, right? And there's a formula for this that I learned back in my 20s, and it's mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspective. So leadership sounds like this. Let's talk about leading others and listen to it. A leader walks in and says, good morning, here's where we're going. Here's what that experience is going to be like on the way to getting it and when we get there. Here's what's important to us. Here's the rules we're going to follow. And here's what it's going to be like when we get there. And here's the perspective on where we are right now. You feel that? A leader walks in the room and says, here's where we're going. Here's how it's going to feel when we get there, on the way and when we get there. Here's what is important to us. Here are the rules we will follow along the way. And here's how we're doing right now. Got it? Does that feel like leadership? It's a formula. By the way, you can throw all your leadership books away because there's the formula of leadership. If you do it, you're a leader. If you don't do it, you're not. It has nothing to do, by the way, with morals. You can have bad values and horrible morals, and if your name is Hitler, you're a leader. And you can lead people the wrong way. And so the challenge that we have, particularly as parents, again, I'm talking to these kids, is I'll say, your biggest challenge is your parents, until you start deciding who you are with your own leadership, your parents are going to lead you. Remember my son going, when do I get to make the rules? And I said, when you can make good decisions. Until you make good decisions, you're going to live vicariously through my decisions. You know? And then when he got to about 13 or 14, he started experimenting with those boundaries to see if I meant it. We went through many years of that. I mean, there were times when, it was tough. It was really tough, I remember, telling him, leave. Strip butt naked, give me the phone and leave. No, I really did do that. I really did on several occasions. I was tired of it. I said, we talked enough. This is talk. Strip butt naked, give me the phone and leave. But these are my clothes, you gave them to me. I'm taking them back. Or you could pay me for it, but that's my money you'd be paying me with, so you don't have any money, so go. I said, and be sure you can fly because you're standing on my property and I want you off. I really said this. Well, because the way he behaved, that's how he deserved to be treated. Now, understand, my son says I'm his best friend. So I want you to know that we are as tight as it comes. I've already gotten at least 4 texts from him today. So I want you to understand, though, that at that time in life, if he didn't know who he was, then he's going to live vicariously through I am. until he figures it out, right? And then we'll go from there. Even today, we'll get in a little tussle, and you'll say, you can't tell me what to do. I said, I'm your lender. I said, and right now, if you do what I say, you don't have to pay the loan back. I said, but any moment that, this doesn't go well, you're going to have to pay me back. And he goes, we had this conversation just recently even. He goes, well, our relationship would never be the same. And I said, is that supposed to scare me? I said, look, I love you. I'm your dad first. I'm anything else second. And right now, I'm more concerned about who you become as a person versus who you become in my life. That's second. I said, so you deal with it any way you want, but if you don't do that, you're screwed. Well, with him, you have to talk that way. No. He gets it. He understands that. Okay. Remember, this is my self-talk. You do what you want. I'm just letting you hear, and you decide, okay, that works, or that doesn't work, or he's stupid, or he's insane, or he's smart. Whatever, that's fine. I just put this out here as a model, that's all. You can play with it any way you want, and that's what you should do, because you're not trying to be anybody but yourself to begin with. But this is the definition of leadership. So if we accept the fact that to be human means we have choice, yes? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm talking to the right group here. If you're human, you have choice. My dog doesn't have choice. I always tell my students, I say, look, we used to have a Doberman growing up, and Sadie, when she passed away and I went in the backyard, she hadn't improved it. She hadn't built doggy condos. She hadn't subdivided it. She never had her friends over. I mean, she didn't do anything. It was a mess. It was a dog pen, and it looked like it all the way. You clear? Right? Okay, that's what it is to be a dog. Okay, now what's it to be human? You have choice. Okay? And I put forth the simple premise that your choice are number one, you have two choices. Number one is to believe that you're self-made or that something or someone else made you. And you need to make that decision because that's going to drive the second one. But, even like my son, he says, well, I don't believe in God. He said this was when he was, very young. He said, I don't believe in God. I said, fair enough. Where'd you come from? And he goes, I came from the earth. I said, where'd that come from? He said, well, that came from the universe. I said, where'd that come from? And he finally got to a place where he goes, I don't know. And I said, we call that God. Whenever we say, I don't know, just insert God, there you go. Right? And it's interesting because his aunt, who he adores, is like a second mother to him. At one time she's misbehaving. She said something like, well, she didn't believe in God. And John was 20 years old. He turned to her and he goes, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And see, we have this parental memory, don't we? We remember unfortunately, we remember the good and the bad, right? We just remember it all, right? So I'm immediately reflecting back to he and I sitting at that white tile counter in our first home, and he and I having that conversation. And then I turned around and watched him parenting his aunt and scolding her for stupid behavior, in his mind anyway. I went, that's pretty funny, isn't it? And she got it too. Well, and he started explaining to her, saying, where did you come from? I'm going, okay, this is really good. This is really good. Yeah, this is really good. He said, well, what if later science proves your belief is wrong? I said, so be it. I said, I think that to be human means we go with the best that we can go with at the time that we're alive. We advance it as far as we can, and if later generations or someone else proves that what we believed was not completely accurate, doobla-doobla. We're going to worry about it, right? We're going to go with the best that we understand today, and we're going to let that ride, okay? So anyway, my belief is that number one, to be human is you have to make that decision. If you don't make that decision, you've ignored your creator, which would be no different than if you had a child, your child ignoring you. If you believe in that, then there's a second issue, and that is you believe you have choice. You believe that you get to bring additional purpose to your life. First purpose is to get in a relationship with whatever or whoever that you think brought you into creation. The second one is you get to bring purpose to it. You get to you get to define what the journey is like that you're going on physically as you get in relationship with your Creator. The statement of leadership is how you do that. Mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspective, right? So the way I explain this to the kids is the way I tell it in the book, The One Thing. Charles Dickens gave us a beautiful, beautiful story in the story of Scrooge on how, in fact, you create purpose or how you come up with that. And again, so let me tell you that story again. You've heard it before. And let me insert the definition of leadership there. And the one thing I simplified it. And I simplified it because the book wasn't about that, but I didn't want to leave it out. So I gave my best simplistic version of purpose, priority, and productivity. In the end, you can use the same story to go back and just deal with purpose itself. Okay? And purpose would go like this. So Scrooge goes to bed one night, and his former partner, who's deceased, Marley, comes to him and says, Scrooge, I don't want you to have a life like I lived. I don't want you to end up like me. So I'm going to send 3 ghosts, the past, present, and future, to tell you about, what life was like and what it can be in the future, so you might change your ways. So then, of course, these 3 ghosts show up. He has this experience. He wakes up the next morning. He runs to the window. He throws it open. He asks the boy down the street, what day is it? The boy says, well, it's Christmas Day. He says, no. What year is it? The boy tells him, and he goes, oh my gosh, no time has passed. Whether it was a dream or it was real doesn't really matter. No time has passed. Now, let's stop for a second. Let's remember, before the night started, who Scrooge was. What was his mission in life? Make money. Absolutely. And his vision for life was misery for everybody. That was his mission. That was his vision for what the experience was. He didn't care. And his vision for what it all feels like in the end is misery for others, and he's happy, and that's the way he viewed it. Right? Well, what was his, what did he think his legacy would be? Nothing. There's no legacy. He'd die with everything. That was his goal. And that was it. It's that simple. What were his values? What did he value?
Money.
Yeah, he valued money and he valued himself, right? What were the rules? The beliefs are rules, right? What you believe is a rule you follow. So what were his beliefs? What was the singular rule that he followed? The golden rule, right? He who has the goal makes the rules, and his whole view was money is for him and he wants it all, right? That's what he wanted, right? And his perspective was brought to him by Marley. And Marley represented perspective. Here's where you are right now. And this is what that mission, vision, values, legacy, beliefs, this is exactly where that has gotten you today. So now all of a sudden he's kind of had a Damascus Road experience. He's been struck blind. He wakes up the next morning, goes to the window, discovers no time has passed, but he's a changed man. So he tells the boy, take this money, go buy the biggest turkey you can, take it to my nephew, tell him, I'm sorry, but I will be there for Christmas this year. And then come back and we're going to go out and do stuff. And he goes out and he runs into people in the streets who say, oh, Mr. Scrooge. And he says, you've asked me in the past to give you money for your charitable works, and come see me and we will talk about doing that. And then he hides behind, the next morning, he hides behind the door waiting for Bob Cratchit to show up. Bob Cratchit shows up, he jumps out, scares him, and he says, why are you late? He says, I'm celebrating the Christmas season. And he says, well, you're fired and you're not going to be rehired unless you take more money. And Bob Cratchit was stunned, and he said, and let's go find Tiny Tim. And he finds Tiny Tim, he says, we're going to save you. And true to his word, as the book ends, he goes to doctors, he saves Tiny Tim's life, he becomes like a second father to him, and he spends the rest of his days doing what? Helping others with his money. Now let's go back and let's look at the formula again. What was his mission at the end of the book? help others. He's gone from self-focus to other people focus. He now cares about others. What's his vision for his life? Helping others. His vision for his life now is on the road to the end of my life or through my life, and afterwards we're going to help as many people as possible. Happiness, helping others. What's the legacy he wants to leave? He wants to leave Tiny Tim alive, by the way. He wants to leave his city in a better place than when he found it, by helping them. What's his values? He values people. What's the rules he follows? Money is good for the good it can do. Okay? So you understand that we can look at that story and we can plug this formula in. And by the contrast of one set of leadership statements and then substitute that for after the experience, we see the power of personal leadership. One of the biggest problems I have when I'm coaching people is they don't know who they are. They don't know where they're going. So when we're going to make decisions, we don't have any barometer. We have nothing to measure against. Well, why are you working? Well, I just need the money. Well, what was your vision for your money? Well, I just need some so I can eat and live. And I'm going, okay. But you will never find extraordinary lives with those kind of answers. Not to remember, breathe. This is my self-talk. You do what you want with it. But my experience is I don't see extraordinary lives with that kind of lackadaisical view of their own life. I don't see it. Ultimately, when I see lives that are extraordinary, that are rich and powerful and meaningful, it's because they have brought meaning to it. They have brought meaning to it. And a lot of people get all caught up with this. And they go, they want to go shave their head, get on a mountain and go, what's my purpose? And they want to go on a sojourn. And you talk to them and say, yeah, I've been working on this for years, or whatever. And you're going, oh, please. You're making this too complicated. It's way too complicated. It could be as simple as, I love music and I want to share it with the world. That's awesome. I'm backstage talking to Pat Simmons and John McVie, the Doobie Brothers, and we're just chatting. And I said, guys, I just want to thank you. And they said, really? Well, we're glad to be here. I said, oh, no. I said, you are the songs in my head. When I was in high school, those are the songs that I listened to. I said, over and over. And no matter what mood I was in, all I had to do was listen to your music, and it transformed me. You changed my life. You changed it and impacted it as much as any person, any event, any saying that anyone ever gave me. You were those messages, you were those songs, you were those melodies, you were deep into my life. And I said, I just want to thank you. I said, I don't know how to thank you enough. I said, honestly, your music was transformative. For me personally, it was unbelievable. And I just want to tell you that. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but I wanted you to hear it from me. That you didn't just write music and sing it. You impacted my life by what you did. And Pat looked at me and he goes, that's why we do it. He goes, thank you, that's why we do it. And I'm going, purpose, purpose, purpose. Purpose, 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 purpose. There you go. And when you see individuals that have brought meaning to their life that way, it drives all the decisions. See, and that's my point. If you know who you are, then we can make some decisions. If you don't know who you are and where you want to go, any decision will get you there. So I don't know what we're talking about. I'm frustrated. I'm confused. Okay? If I bring you on my football team and you say, we want to win, the Super Bowl, we can work with that. If you say you just want to play football and breathe, I don't know what I can do with that. I don't know what that gets me. I think I want to go play with someone else. Okay? So when we start off with this, what we're starting off with is a very basic, this right here is just a very basic, that right there. Nothing else. That right there is, as parents, that's essentially what we're trying to do as parents. We're trying to parent our kids, or these children that we love, into having some sense of meaning, of some sense of purpose. We're trying to keep them alive until, and on life support, until they can breathe on their own with their own sense of self-direction. Yes? And we begin to breathe sighs of relief when we start to see signs that they are picking up that and running with it. Right? Say yes? Yeah. And oh, by the way, take your own advice. Do it for yourself. And it's not complicated. I always tell people, they say, well, how do you get started? I said, oh, it's real simple. Just write down like 5 words that you have a passion, 5 things you have a passion for. And then write down 5 things that you like to do or skills that you have. Just write that down. And then ultimately, you can write a mission statement simply by saying, my mission is to do something I have a passion for by implementing a skill that I have. Have a nice day. It's actually that simple. It's that simple. Right? It doesn't have to, and by the way, it doesn't have to be, always have to say, I want to cure cancer. Though I would love for cancer to be cured, what I've discovered in my own life is, I'm not going to be the one that does that. But what I do know is that one of my students might. Right? So my view with my life is I want to help people experience their best life possible through my writing and my teaching. That's it. That's what my mission statement says. And I'm very clear about my vision for my life and what I tend to leave behind. And I'm very clear about what's important to me. I'm very clear, right? For me, I always start with the spirituality, so I always start with God. It's going to be my family and friends, and it's going to be business. And you'll notice that I will never put business ahead of friends. Ever, 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 ever. Right? If you saw me on stage at the Red Bash, I had my former high school friend right up there on stage with me. He lives in Dallas. We had just come from lunch early in the day where I had a college roommate who was having a terrible time, he and his wife. A really horrific time, actually. And 2 of my other college roommates had flown in, and we all had lunch together. Because this was just, they all lived, 3 of them lived in Dallas, so this was the time to do it. And I'm doing all of this while I'm doing this. Why? Because of my value system. It definitely heaps up on additional stress, too. Because you don't have the time for it. And on the flip side, you don't have the time not to do it, do you? Say, no, you do not. No, you do not. You do not. Because at the end of the day, to have left here and not tried to help that family would have been worse than anything. Would have been worse than anything for me. So your values are going to show up. I always laugh, because I always talked about the days that, you know, when my son was in school and wanted me to have lunch with him. Right. Yep. I always had those circled, and so if people were coming into town and that was the only day of the week I could go have lunch with him, I would just put them in the car, we'd drive over to the middle school, and we'd all sit in those little chairs like this and drink the little milk out of cartons and all this, and we'd, you know, talk to the kids, and we'd get back in the car and drive back. That's just the way it goes. And if you didn't want to do that, you could stay at the office, but that's what we were going to do, you know. And if I had 4 or 5 people, I would show up to the school, right, with these 4 or 5 people in these suits, you know, and ties and everything. We'd march right in, get in line with the kids, and do all that. Yeah. You know? That's it. I mean, that's how you do it. Now, here's the trick. Once you understand that, that's going to drive all these other decisions. If you don't know who you are and you start making these other decisions, what I don't know is why you're doing them and what you're going to attach it to. Remember the research from The One Thing. And this was probably, I get asked this question since the book came out, you know, what are some of the things that you learned, you know, in doing all this research? I'll tell you one of the things I learned that was profound. And that is happiness happens on the way to fulfillment. Now, I kind of always understood that life is a journey, not a destination, right? We get that. Let me tell you, when you look at the research where men and women have spent their life studying the question of happiness, it will blow you away. It will astound you when you realize that happiness is not something, if you want your children to be happy, happiness is not something they should seek. I know that sounds weird, but the research and all the people that have lived before you and I that have been surveyed on this subject will come back and say that's not what they should seek. What they should seek is fulfillment. They should have purpose. They should have meaning. Duh. Duh, there it is. Right there at the top. They should have meaning. And when they have meaning, happiness happens on the way to fulfilling it. Those are the most happiest people in the world. Those are the most. Okay? The people that are least are the people that simply want to be happy and pursue being happy. They are the least happiest people in the world. Okay? So here's what we know. If we want our kids to be happy, what do we want them to do? Figure out who they are. If we can help them make a decision about who they are, that they feel good about, which is who we are is kind of who we're becoming, right? It's who we're becoming. It's what we're trying to accomplish with our life in the world. When we do that, our kids are going to be okay. They're going to be okay. Okay? So once we understand this and we know who we are, we're going to drive it through what I call the 6 disciplines. Now, these are 6 areas of discipline. Dr. Covey, who recently passed away, wrote an astounding book, an amazing book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And when I looked at my own life, I came back and I said, I think it's 18 habits. And in fact, let me prove it to you. Okay? And I don't mean this 18 habits of highly successful people. I mean the 18 habits you will have to deal with in your life at some level. Whether you choose them or not, you've got them. Because remember, habit is something that you do over time, consistently. That's called a habit. And the challenge is choosing habits versus habits choosing you. And the dangers of habits choosing you is that when they choose you, they're just as hard to get rid of as anything else. So we are very afraid of our children just getting habits, aren't we? Say yes. Now, when I was in college, I had kind of an out-of-body experience. I'm in college, and I look down, and I'm actually biting my fingernail, like that, chewing on it. Yeah, like that. Like that. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird thing to do. Why do I do that? I just had that question in my mind. Then it kind of blipped and went away, and I went back to what I was doing. A month or so later, I got home, and for maybe a long weekend, I think, and I'm sitting at the breakfast table with my mother and father, and I'm talking to them. And all of a sudden, I look up, and my father has his hand crammed in his mouth. You know, like this, and I went, oh, monkey see, monkey do. Oh, got it. My dad did it, I do it. Mindlessly, I've got a habit. And then I thought, what other habits do I mindlessly have? You know? No, really, it was an interesting aha. I think I was about 20, maybe 21 years old when I had this aha, and I went, what other habits do I have that I just have that have nothing to do with me choosing? And that's when I realized, oh, that I'm human. I get to make a choice. Maybe I should start choosing these. Now, not all of them. I mean, our lives are made up of how many habits would you estimate? Just for the fun of it, what do you think? Oh, yes, hundreds. Exactly. 100. Hundreds and hundreds, Adele. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I'm sure of it, right? Almost, absolutely. Very little of what we do is truly spontaneous, right? I mean, you're not sitting there actually mentally thinking about the next thing you're going to do. You're actually doing it. The way you're sitting right now is a habit. The way you sit and take notes is a habit. The way you listen is a habit. I mean, you're probably exhibiting no less than 10 habits right now. Just sitting there. It's all habitual. It's just automatically you've done it, you've done it, you've done it, you've done it. Okay? So we need to respect habits. They're easy to accumulate. They're difficult to get rid of. Right? The challenge of a habit is sometimes they are too loose to be noticed. They're like a chain that's too loose to be noticed until they're too tight to break. And that's the problem of a habit. So they should be respected. So I'm going to put forth an argument that there are 6 areas of discipline, and there's a couple of basic habits in each one. So what I want to do in our time together is just walk you through these, okay? That's the essence of this 2-day class called Quantum Leap, is going deep, 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 drilling down into this. With the kids, we go through each one of them. and we examined them one by one. So let me just quickly go through these. The first area of habits is called self. And then you'll notice after self, it's spiritual, physical, it's time, and it's money. So those are, you can tell, those are essentially what I consider